Threads. 10 million join Meta's Twitter rival, Zuckerberg says. 10 million users signed up for Meta's newly launched Threads app in its first 7 hours, the company's chief Mark Zuckerberg says. He pitched the app as a friendly rival to Twitter, which was bought by Elon Musk in October. Experts say Threads could attract Twitter users unhappy with recent changes to the platform. Threads allows users to post up to 500 characters, and has many features similar to Twitter. Earlier, Mr. Zuckerberg said keeping the platform friendly will ultimately be the key to its success. But Mr. Musk responded, "It is infinitely preferable to be attacked by strangers on Twitter than indulge in the false happiness of hide the pain Instagram." When asked on Threads whether the app will be bigger than Twitter, Mr. Zuckerberg said, "It'll take some time, but I think there should be a public conversations app with 1 billion plus people on it. Twitter has had the opportunity to do this but hasn't nailed it. Hopefully we will." Competitors have criticized the amount of data the app might use. This may include health, financial, and browsing data linked to users' identities, according to the Apple App Store. Threads is now available to download in over 100 countries including the UK, but not yet in the EU because of regulatory concerns. 4 arrested in Hong Kong after bounties set up for activists abroad. Hong Kong police have arrested 4 men whom they accuse of supporting people based overseas who endanger national security. The local arrests come 2 days after Hong Kong put up bounties for 8 pro-democracy activists living abroad. The bounties have sparked an overseas outcry and follow a sweeping national security law imposed by Beijing. The 4 arrested include Ivan Lam, the former chair of disbanded political party Democisto, local media said. Democisto was co-founded by activist Nathan Law, who now lives in the UK and is one of the targets of this week's bounty. Earlier this week, Mr. Law told the BBC that his life had immediately become more dangerous. The 8 subjects of the 1 million Hong Kong dollars, £100,581, $127,637 bounty are based in the UK, the US and Australia, countries that have no extradition treaty with China. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China. Under Beijing's "one country, two systems" policy, the people of Hong Kong enjoy wider freedoms compared to those living in the mainland. However, pro-democracy protests in 2019 paved the way for the National Security Law, which came into force in June 2020. Police have since arrested 260 people for violating it. Hong Kong National Security Law. What is it and why is it worrying? The 4 men arrested Wednesday night are accused of conspiracy to collude with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security, and conspiracy to doing acts with seditious intent. Their offenses are punishable by life imprisonment under the National Security Law. Also on Wednesday, police seized banners and flags of online shopping app Me, that serves as a guide for Hong Kongers on restaurants, shops and service providers that support the pro-democracy movement. Oil giant Shell warns cutting production, dangerous. Cutting oil and gas production would be dangerous and irresponsible, the boss of energy giant Shell has told the BBC. While Sawin insisted that the world still desperately needs oil and gas, as moves to renewable energy were not happening fast enough to replace it. He warned increased demand from China and a cold winter in Europe could push energy prices and bills higher again. Mr. Sawin angered climate scientists who said Shell's plan to continue current oil production until 2030 was wrong. Professor Emily Schuckberg, a climate scientist at the University of Cambridge, said firms such as Shell should focus on accelerating the green transition, rather than trying to suggest the most vulnerable in society are in any way best served by prolonging our use of oil and gas. Head of the UN Antonio Guterres recently said investment in new oil and gas production was economic and moral madness. Mr. Sawin told the BBC, "I respectfully disagree." He added, "What would be dangerous and irresponsible is cutting oil and gas production so that the cost of living, as we saw last year, starts to shoot up again. The world is in a race to ditch fossil fuels in favor of greener alternatives as globally leaders have pledged to keep the world from warming by more than 1.5 C this century." Last year, the European Commission outlined how the EU would speed up its shift to green energy to end its dependency on Russian oil and gas. Many countries do not have the infrastructure to move to more sustainable forms of energy. Mr. Sawin said an international bidding war for gas last year saw poorer countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh unable to afford liquefied natural gas, LNG, shipments that were instead diverted to Northern Europe. They took away LNG from those countries and children had to work and study by candlelight, he said. If we're going to have a transition, it needs to be a just transition that doesn't just work for one part of the world. The Committee of Climate Change found household gas appliances were linked to respiratory problems and cardiovascular disease. Claire Fison, co-head of climate policy at Climate Analytics, a global science and policy institute, told the BBC, "The idea that it's a choice between our addiction to fossil fuels or working by candlelight is a gross misrepresentation of reality, when we know renewables are cleaner, cheaper and better for public health." The UK has pledged to spend £11.6 billion on international climate finance, but a memo seen by the BBC said economic shocks like the COVID pandemic had turned a stretching target into a huge challenge. The head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, has said that, if governments are serious about the climate crisis, there can be no new investments in oil, gas and coal from now.